USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
Bill Macleod, Houghton Lake, Michigan. I was the 9th pick in the draft, number 9. And I decided, through good advice, that I would enlist. And I enlisted and became an RA. One of the best moves I made going into basic and AIT was the fact that I had an AR prefix instead of a US prefix. And I got along well with the NCOs. Physically strong, physically fit, so it wasn't much of a challenge other than getting up early in the morning. And I enlisted in November of 1968 in Detroit and was shipped to Fort Knox for my basic training. There I befriended my NCO. He was also from Detroit, so we got along well. We knew most of the sites, so it turned out that he recommended me for NCO school in basic, but at that time they shipped me to Fort Ord for my AIT. At Fort Ord, I was trained as a mortar, an 11C, and developed a good sense of what I was supposed to be doing in the service. From there, I was sent to NCO school in Fort Benning, where I became what they called a shake and bake, which was a term for a quick promotion from private first class to sergeant E5. There you were trained on different things: maneuverability, compass reading, map reading, which I had a great deal of knowledge on maps because my parents were map readers. And from that point, they sent me to Fort Polk to do my NCO training and to learn jungle training, to go through jungle training. By the time I was shipped to Nam, it was almost a year. And I was shipped to Nam after Thanksgiving of November of '69. Shipped into Vietnam, out Da Nang to Chu Lai, where we did our 2-week orientation. Pretty stressful. And, it was, Chu Lai was interesting, a lot of noise, a lot of confusion, where to go, what to do. But you settled down, they gave you your orders, and you moved to where you were supposed to go. 11C is mortars who are on the 80 millimeter mortars. Sometimes the 4-deuce, but mostly the 80 millimeter mortars out on the Firebases. And when I had got to my Firebase, they already had enough 11C, so they turned me into 11B Bravo. You're going out with the troops. By being a sergeant and a map reader, I became a semi-forward observer with the headquarters squad of the company, Charlie Company, 1st to the 46th, 196th Light Infantry Brigade, 23rd Macleod Division. Sent out to the field and lost my best friend. One of my good friends on that day, going out to the field. He turned left into the rotors and was killed instantly. It was a drop off into the jungle. It was a resupply of food, ammunition, and FNGs. That's what we were, FNGs. And by God, I have no idea what happened to him, why he turned left. But he did, and We were in the jungle that night, and that was spookier than I could ever imagine. People took you under their wing. People said, you know, this is what you do. This is how you do it. Take this out of your rucksack. You don't need this. Carry this around. Get rid of the steel helmet and get a jungle hat. You'll be much better off. Which we did. But it would help being an NCO because, you know, you could fraternize and you could go with the NCOs and the lower and the privates and the ETH, you know, specs. Plus, you learn quickly what to do and how to do it. First mission was a Firebase, NBA Firebase. We hit that. Didn't take any prisoners, and were lifted out back to Firebase LZ Pro, which was my home for the next 7.5 months. You know, at that time, because I had been a mortarman, I was accepted into the mortar pit bunkers. So I had my own bunkers and a little bit better atmosphere until I had to pull guard duty on the Firebase perimeter. Next trip out, we hit an ambush, and I pushed a punji stick through my hand and falling to the ground. It's been littered. And a few of the other guys had the same situation, but got out of it. We lost 2 people. Got out of it, called the chopper in. We picked up the bodies, we moved on. It went on like that repeatedly. Different missions. You were out for 2 weeks, on the Firebase for 5 days, and then you took up a new patrol. I had been in a tunnel. And it was not an easy thing to do. But that's what somebody said, you do this, you do that. You know, you didn't ask questions, you went ahead and. The only time I ever asked a question and refused an order was when a new lieutenant told me that we should take my squad and march across an open field. And I told him, no, that was idiotic, stupid. It was just as easy to go around the perimeter of the jungle than to walk out into the open. 2 men walked out in the open, both were shot.
After you're suggesting?
Yeah. But he was still upset. We found him one day in a firefight behind a log. He didn't really he was new. And you can't blame him. New people do strange things. Shell shock, mostly shell shock. I mean, it was just too much. Sometimes it was like that. Sometimes you know, it just depends on what was going on. I mean, you know, adrenaline, in my case, a lot of times adrenaline would kick in. And it would be like, you either got to get your ass out of here or you're going to have to fight your way out. And crazy. Being a mortarman, this is my nickname, turned out to be Hang It, because I had mortar training. We had this old mortar back at the Firebase, which was a 60, a small tube with a tripod, and you could use a helmet as a base plate. Got rid of the tripod and used a towel. You can direct that mortar as long as you have an idea where it's going. So against a lot of people's idea that I was being smart, I humped the 60 in the back, and they humped rounds. But when we hit an NVA base camp in the morning, it was going to be our type of ambush. We were going to go in and surprise them because they were still asleep for some unknown reason. And they asked me to set the mortar up, and when they went, to fire it. Well, it was my first time doing that, being excited. When I dropped the round, I yelled, "Hang it," which meant it was in the tube and it was going out. And it landed with good effect, and yeah, we had taken that Firebase, taken their camp, and 14, and I believe it was 12 to 14 NVA dead, and some colonel flew out in a helicopter and gave us warm beer and an ice cream, told us what a good job we had done, and I said, kill a bunch of people, a couple of people dead, and you give me ice cream and a warm beer. We were in a night logger, getting ready to move out. It was my turn to walk point. And a good friend of mine from Maine, he said, I think I'll walk today. I think I'll walk point. You can be the third man. And I said, okay. We walked out of base camp. We got a little way down the trail, and he tripped a frag and blew his legs off. And I got a little bit of shrapnel. Second man got a little bit of shrapnel. But just realization that he had taken my place. Maybe I would have seen it, maybe I wouldn't. I don't know to this day. It was always, it was so confusing. I mean, you knew what to do, but you didn't know what was going to happen any step you took. We had different combats, different types of problems. Grenade, I had a guy pull a pin on a white phosphorus one night to kill himself, and he did, but he also burned 2 to 3 other people sleeping close by. Those were things that happened.
Is that an NFG, as you call it?
No, it was somebody who had enough. You had to remember, you didn't sleep. You got maybe 2-4 hours of sleep a night. You walked all day. They gave you canned food. That was half of it was inedible, or you didn't eat it. You traded your ass off for pound cake and peaches. Middle of the end of the 6th month, which would have been June, we were involved in a battalion-sized operation at Hepduck, which lasted 4 or 5 days. Heavy contact, scenes of things I've never ever seen, and landed outside on a hill, spent the night, next morning moved out, crossing of fields, grass field. They opened up with a 52 on us and got split up. Our platoon went into a wooded area and set up a perimeter. The lieutenant was going to call in coordinates of where we were. And one of the guys says, I have to go real bad. And stupidly walked outside the perimeter and was killed, shot. Second guy ran in to get him, he was shot and killed. And a firefight commenced. We pulled wounded people out. Lieutenant was hit. Several other people were hit. Pulled back. Best we can, called in a chopper. Put the lieutenant on the chopper. Put the other 3 or 4 wounded on the chopper. Got the chopper out of there. Moved out from that area out into the open where we could see where we had been, where the 2 guys were. Tried to go back in, couldn't, pulled back, called in strikes arty strikes. They came in, they bombed it, told us to pull back, pull back. We go up the hill that we had previously set up. We climbed back up on the hill that afternoon, just tired and screaming. Got to the top of the hill, dug in, set up. They fired whatever at us. Rocket came in or whatever to my right and went in. The guy had been showing me a picture of his new baby. And he was taken out. And he was taken out. And so we just hung in there, and Puff came by, did a hell of a job. Puff the Magic Dragon, the Gatling, and you could hear the branches, you could hear the birds, the monkeys screaming. But it quieted down. We spent a relatively uneventful night on that hill. Walked off the hill in the dark at about 4 a.m. People falling, getting back up, hand over hand on the next guy. We walked off the hill. Got involved going down the hill. Walked across. Fortunately, the guy in front had saw the wire. We walked over a grenade, a trap, went another click, and came across commo wire. And figured we were really close to something if they've got communication out here, because it wasn't ours. So we cut that, moved on, kept going, took a couple more casualties, kept going, mostly slightly wounded. And they told us to climb the hill up to the Firebase, LZ, believe it was LZ West. I could be mistaken on what Firebase it was. And we were maybe 10 or so clicks away from that Firebase. And we had to walk there, get to that Firebase. With that night, there was quite a bit of anger about the stupidity of this whole war and this and that. And, but they got it together and we walked off the next morning to get our dead. You always recovered with your dead. You never left them. The only problem was if you were going to be killed yourself. Yeah, it was very horrific. I mean, a lot of noise, a lot of crap. I had 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, all with B and oak leaves.
What did you get the stars for?
Pulling people out of situations, pulling wounded, having to do some things that were not pleasant among, just in actual combat, and saving a few people. Yeah, it was just, what do you do? I wasn't leaving anybody behind. The only time I did was those 2 men. There was no way to get back in there. The second one was at getting those people out of that ambush and the wounded and dead onto a chopper. It was basically, saving your friends. It wasn't anything that heroic. I mean, it was just, to me, it was just common sense. If a guy's wounded, you go get him. If he's dead, you go get him. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's difficult when you have so many new people, you don't make friends because you don't know what that friend is going to be with you tomorrow. And it was very hard to lose people. And it's a lot. Punji Stick was an ambush. The shrapnel was in that, when I told you about the my friend, taking point. The third one was coming out of a helicopter in a combat situation. With mine last, it was end of July, 1970. I had been assigned a squad and was told to load. We were going into, with our whole platoon, we were going into an area where there was heavy NVA involvement. They had ambushed D Company, and we were going to be sent into behind the ambush to turn the NVA away from the ambush and attack us. I was in the second bird on the second bird with dangling over the edge as we usually rode. And we got out into, this was off of LZ Marianne, brand new Firebase that we had just got on. It was just basically rough being built. And it was involved in the heavy NVA traffic in that area. And they thought this Firebase would be a good place to set up a Firebase. When in actuality, it wasn't. The hills overlooking it, you could look down on the Firebase. No, you don't build anything when people look down on you. And that was, if you read the story of LZ Marianne, you'll find that 30 people lost their lives in a sapper attack months after I left. But on that particular day, we were heading out to do that ambush in the chopper. The second bird, I was in second bird. First bird, first off, you have to understand the jets came in and blew the LZ, knocked everything down, opened up an area for the choppers to land. And the first bird went in. My bird's waiting to go in. When all of a sudden they're taking heavy fire going in, my pilot says, go, means get out. And we were still 60 feet in the air when I went out. Pure instinct, or whatever it was. Whatever it was, I remember looking down, seeing the trees coming up, and looking up and seeing my medic looking out with his eyes just bulging out of his head, and I was hit the ground, and fortunately it was soft sand. I used my training to back on my rucksack, let that take the blow, and laid there, pulled a pin on a grenade, because there was actually bullets going over, and pulled out my .38, which is another story about how I got a .38, and lay there till they came in and got me. They put me in the hospital in Chulai, and some general came in and said, "Where's that fool that jumped from 60 feet?" And I didn't say a word, and he just pointed me out and said, "Thank you for your service, you're going home." They called it a helicopter crash. And never got any, never thought of it until later. And they sent me to Chulai to Da Nang, Da Nang to Japan, Japan to Alaska, Alaska to Chicago Naval Hospital. And to this day, I can remember riding in the bus, going to the hospital in Chicago, and looking at the trees and wondering, where are the snipers? Don't they realize there could be, and my parents came to see me. My dad had made contacts in Washington, found out where I was. And my mom and dad came to see me while I was in the hospital. I couldn't talk to them for almost an hour. It was just shaking so hard.
What year was this that you got back to?
End of 70, August of 70. August of 70. It all happened rather quickly. You have to understand, when they let me go, from Chicago Naval Hospital. They walked in, this guy walked in, I don't know what rank he was, but he said, you have two options. You can sign this waiver of disability, or you can go to Fort Hood and train for the next 3 months till you're discharged. Well, at that time I said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, if you want to go home, you waive your disability. If you want to go home. If you don't want to go home, you can go to Fort Hood and train troops for the next 3 months. I hadn't had any R&R. I've been in country for 9 months, constant combat, and I just said, I'm going home. The doctor released me. He said, you're okay now, but when you get older, you're going to hurt. You don't have a broken back, you have, and not have problems. Well, they were just saying, go home, you'll be all right. I signed off it, yeah, I had no disability at all. I had no disability at all because basically I could walk and I didn't have much pain. I went home, yeah, I grew my hair long, started to wear bell bottoms and enjoyed life as it was at that time, and was turned away from the American Legion because my hair was too long. The guy told me, we don't allow hippies in here. I just felt let down. And I mean, and as long as I could, work and do things, I did. And then it got to the point in 2016 that I started to experience pain, and my wife talked me into, you need to go see the VA. You've done enough. You go see the VA.
Up until that point, you weren't involved with the VA too much?
No contact with any of them. I had to call Senator, one of my congressmen, to get my records released. That's when I noticed they didn't have fell from helicopter. They just they had a helicopter crash. So I thought, oh, that's good. The helicopter never crashed. I did. VA was very, very helpful to me. Have done a lot. I have 80% disability. I can't hear. I have rashes that occur.
Agent Orange?
I am Agent Orange certified, but I have no disability recognition. They just said, you're Agent Orange certified, but we can't prove you have any herbicide poisoning or whatever, other than your legs burn and you have neuropathy, sclerosis. Yeah. But I am 80%, working for 100, trying to get to 100. So basically, because I know one thing, if I do fall again, it's going to be difficult for me to get up. And it already is difficult for me to get up from the floor, but my wife would never be able to pick me up without help.
How old are you now?
76. I mean, sure, I know I have some PTSD, but I mean, it doesn't, I don't think about it too much, and I don't express it too much. I mean, very few people know in the community that I live in. I know I'm a veteran, but they don't know, what I went through or whatever. Country, it was just stupidity. The war never should have happened. It was a civil war. We fought a civil war. But I mean, just because somebody decided that Ho Chi Minh was communist and the communists were going to take over, we decided that we needed to go to Vietnam. As one wise man said, never get involved in a land war in Southeast Asia. You'll never get out. And how many years did we spend trying to get out? And then we just left. But now they're our friends. My pants are made from Vietnam. Figure that one out.